Welcome back to End is the Future, a podcast that brings together great minds to address the opportunities and challenges of making businesses both sustainable and profitable. I am Ilham Kadri, and I'm delighted to be your host today. If you are as passionate about sustainable business as I am, let's explore how End is the Future together. So today, I'm so happy and thrilled to be speaking with former NASA astronaut Doug Hurley, who many of you will know from his starring role in the Netflix documentary Return to Space. In 2009, Doug piloted the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and in 2011, he piloted the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which was the final flight of Space Shuttle program. But that was not Doug's final flight. In 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, he returned to space aboard the SpaceX Dragon rocket. So after clocking more than 92 days in space, Doug retired. I'm not sure if he retired really from such job and environment, and now works for Northrop Grumman, which builds the two towering motors that powered Artemis rocket to the moon. What's a resume? Doug, thank you so much for being here today.
It's so good to be here with you talking about everything space and rockets. It's very exciting.
And we love it. You make us, dream. So first of all, I think we are so interested to hear about your incredible career in space. But first, to get to know you a bit better, can you tell us, Doug, a little more about your upbringing? I think it was in New York, if my research is right. And what first sparked your interest in flight and then later going into space?
Yeah, I was born and raised in what we refer to here as upstate New York, so well away from New York City. So the northern part of New York, which is pretty rural. And I had just a great upbringing and, had a wonderful family life and played sports and all those things that, young boys do. And it was at a pretty young age, like 4, 5, 6, that age that I was really fascinated with airplanes and flight. And then at that time also, from a space perspective, we had already completed Apollo and we were working our way into Skylab. So I remember seeing Skylab growing up and then certainly Space Shuttle, but, always interested in space and science fiction, but really, it was airplanes, and jets. And so that's kind of what led me down this career path that I ended up, spending the rest of my life doing so far.
Wow. And I'm sure everyone asks you this question. So I cannot, push back myself to do it, but you've been to space 3 times now. It must be a life-changing experience. What was it like for you, Doug?
Going to space was incredible, I think, for even the most hardened astronauts and people who don't think it's going to have an effect on you. It does have an effect on you. To see your planet from orbit is unbelievable. It's breathtaking, beautiful. You think about so many different things when you're looking back at the planet. Of course, everything that you know and everything that you loved is back down there on the surface of the Earth. You don't see borders. The sunrises, the sunsets, the different regions of the planet, the mountain ranges, the beautiful colors of the oceans, the deserts, everything just looks incredible. And it really does change your perspective on things. And I think the other part that you realize very quickly is you can see that how thin the atmosphere is, and that's what's protecting us. And really gives you that sense that, at least in my case, and I think many others, but certainly mine, is, we've got to take care of this. We've been given such a gift to be able to live on this planet, and we've got to take care of it.
Wow. And you became kind of a household name with the SpaceX Dragon mission and the Netflix or obviously documentary that came after it. And for those who may not know, in the SpaceX Dragon mission was very interesting because I think it's almost a partnership, right, between NASA, which partners with SpaceX, obviously a private company, to fly astronauts to the International Space Station from American soil for the first time since the shuttle program ended. So, Doug, it was really a new era of space exploration, right? And in that sense, there was some risk. I mean, it was a completely different rocket and different way of working, which of course had been tested multiple times, but still. And of course, you have to think of your wife, your young son, I guess, right? You are a human being. What made you confident that this was going to be a successful mission, Doug?
That's a great question. I think, part of it was certainly after I had flown on the last shuttle flight in 2011, I honestly didn't know if there would be another space flight for me, at least certainly with NASA. But so many things have changed in the last 10, 12 years, as you've kind of talked about. But I think for us, being asked to participate kind of on the ground floor with, at the time, was both SpaceX and Boeing. Those were the two companies that were selected to build vehicles that could get us to and from the United States to the International Space Station and carry a crew of 4. And to be on the ground floor, being able to help develop those vehicles initially with both companies. And then, of course, Bob and I being selected to be the crew that would fly the first Dragon flight was kind of a dream come true in many ways, from the standpoint of being a pilot and a test pilot. To be able to be the first to fly a space vehicle is kind of a once in a generational opportunity. And we spent many, many years working with SpaceX, frankly, living out there in Los Angeles more than we were in our home in Houston with our family. But certainly, yeah, we understood the risks, and, everybody was working towards that same goal, which was to safely fly astronauts to and from the International Space Station. And, being part of that, living through some of the challenges we had, we lost, SpaceX lost a rocket relatively early on in that process. It was a resupply flight where they lost a rocket. And then, we worked our way towards the uncrewed test flight, which ended up being really successful. And then just a few months later, we lost that capsule in a ground test. And so, yeah, there were many moments and many challenges that we had to work through to get to the point where we would fly the vehicle. We had challenges with the parachutes. Sometimes the parachutes weren't performing very well during the testing. And there was a lot of work that went into getting those designed to the point where people were really comfortable with the parachutes. And then finally, we got to the point where SpaceX performed an in-flight abort test of the entire system. And so what that involved was using essentially destroying a rocket in order to prove that the capsule, the Dragon capsule, could successfully separate from the rocket if there was an issue with the rocket and get the crew back to safety. And that test went off without a hitch. It was an amazing test. And I think at that point, both Bob and I had just incredible confidence that the vehicle, the system would perform well. And even if it didn't, and we had a really bad day, that the abort capability was there to save us and get us back to our families if the worst happened. Luckily, we had a great mission.
Yeah, this is fabulous. And I'm sure it resonates with many of our employees and in the audience, right? Because at the end of the day, also the chemical industry and the industry in general, we're still looking for our way to zero accidents and incidents and get everybody working for companies like ours back home safely. And it's interesting to hear someone like you, how you manage the risk, and there are always risks no matter what, of course. And I know you saw that firsthand as you were actually on the runway when the Columbia accident happened, right, Doug? If I read it well. And that was before you ever went to space. What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, that was in 2003. And ironically, it was both Bob and I. We part of our job, our first job as astronauts after we completed our initial training was as astronaut support personnel, or what we called Cape Crusaders. And so that job involved all the launches and landings for the different shuttle flights, and we would strap the crews in. We would configure the vehicles. We would typically be the last one out when the crew was strapped in, ready for launch, and we'd be the first one in after they landed. And my first time as kind of the lead was during STS-107. So I had strapped the crew in January. I think it was January 15th or 16th when they launched. And then, of course, this was February 1st, and we were at the runway in Florida waiting for them to land. And of course, as history tells us, they did, the vehicle broke up over kind of the central United States. We lost the crew. And yeah, it was an incredibly difficult experience to go through, as you would imagine. I mean, I think part of it is it was so public, and so, the world knew, right? And then it was 7 people that I had gotten to know really well, having worked with them for the, that year leading up to their launch. And they were just a wonderful group of people anyway. So it was just a terrible, terrible event, but it shows that, all the things that we ask of vehicles to do going to and from space, it's dangerous. There's just so much physics involved to get a vehicle to go from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour into orbit. And then you have to do the same thing in reverse to get them back home. And everything has to work the way it was designed. And unfortunately, there was the heat shield was compromised on the ascent of Columbia, and there was a hole in the wing, and those 3,000 or 4,000 degrees that vehicles experience as they're coming back through the atmosphere, essentially melted the wing of Columbia, and we lost the vehicle.
Yeah, and it's tragic. It's heartbreaking. And so to move to maybe more positives, I think you talked about Bob. I think it's Bob Behnken, if I pronounce it well.
Yep,
in the documentary, when I watch it with my family, one of the best parts, actually beyond the magic of what you are doing, is seeing the close friendship you had with your mission partner Bob, and the great bond that's formed throughout the years. I loved how you brought that toy dinosaur into space for your sons, and as your zero gravity indicator, and that people called you the space dad. What was it like going into space with such a good friend? Does it actually weigh more than with someone you don't know, and that you could essentially probably trust with your life, with the life? How is it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think for us, it was such a privilege, and we were lucky. Bob was, we gravitated to each other almost from day one when we showed up at NASA in 2000. And we've been close friends ever since, where we were in each other's weddings, and we're both married astronauts. We're all 4 of us are very close, and our sons are close. But, it really made such a difference. I think, one, because we knew each other so well. We had flown together so many times in a NASA jet and done so many simulators together as we were training for shuttle. And we just knew each other's, you could just tell what each other were thinking without ever saying anything. We had tremendous confidence in each other's abilities.
Yeah.
We both had an incredible amount of experience in flight tests. We'd worked major programs in the military. Bob had worked on the F-22, and I'd worked on the Super Hornet. But I think for Bob and I, having known each other so well, it just in so many ways made it easier because it was a pretty monumental task. I think,
Yeah.
to be quite honest, when NASA had first awarded that contract to SpaceX and to Boeing, I think there were very few people who really honestly believed that SpaceX would be successful flying people. And Bob and I probably were two of those people, but it was a monumental task. I think people expected it would be much easier with Boeing than it would be with SpaceX. And so ironically, that's not the way it went, but it just really helped in every possible way. And then in the end, just from the human standpoint, being able to fly with one of your best, if not your best friend, I mean, that is such, it's so lucky to be able to do that. And, because in most cases, the NASA crews, you may not even, you get assigned with a crewmate or multiple crewmates in the case of ISS or with shuttle, you may not know them hardly at all. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but, looking back, I didn't have to worry about any of those things and knew that Bob and I, we'd been literally all over the world together and, trained together and done all these different things, both as astronauts and, then our families. It just was easy.
Yeah. What's an adventure. And I have to say, watching that documentary, there are so many tense moments, Doug, especially the lift off, the splashdown, and those excruciating few seconds during the blackouts when you are hurling back towards the Earth. And of course, we already know it all ends well, but it gets your heart rate going all the same. And we are just, sitting on our sofas. What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was all, they were all big and just from a professional standpoint that the ascent and the entry are typically the most dangerous. They're typically the most, where things could go wrong, that it's typically in those, environments. But I think, kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, just how flawlessly SpaceX executed the uncrewed test flight from start to finish. The in-flight abort test was flawless. And so we kind of felt like we were certainly trained well enough to handle any issues that might come up. We were confident in the teams, both the SpaceX mission control teams and the NASA teams. And, I think so many times, and I, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at this, but I think it's just, the biggest thing you have to remember to do in life is enjoy the moment, take the moment in. And I think we did that, and I remember there were many times where we looked at each other and it was like, well, that's the first time somebody's done this, or, in a Dragon, or that's the first time we've done that. And it was, the whole mission was like that. And so it was just, once again, we had confidence in ourselves, but we also had confidence in the system and the confidence in the folks that built Dragon and built Falcon 9. And, because we had spent literally the last several years leading up to that flight with them. And, it was a great team, and we had a great team of NASA engineers and flight directors that were there as well. It was a small team, but it was just an incredible group of folks. And yeah, we lived through it. I think the part that probably doesn't get mentioned as much, and maybe you felt that way when you were watching Return to Space, is your families. They are the ones that are kind of on the edge of their seat because they don't have any control about what's going on. They don't know exactly what's going on, certainly at the moment. And so it was certainly, we were confident that everything would work the way it was supposed to, and it did. And we got to get back with our families a couple months after we launched.
Absolutely. And you talked about, enjoy the journey, the carpe diem, at the same time, family, having faith. And I think you know it, Doug. You brought a lot of hope to people in a very dark time when we were in a lockdown with COVID-19. And remember, you posted so many incredible pictures of planet Earth, our home, on that mission, and many people followed your story and were so inspired. I think you are actually bringing more talents, into the pipeline, probably, who want to do the same. And I suppose it never gets old looking out of the window down to our beautiful planet. Have you received this testimonial? Did you know up there that you were impacting us during our, crazy lockdown?
I don't think we did really understand or realize at the time that it was that impactful to people. I'm so glad it was. Certainly part of it was because, we were getting ready to launch, which in and of itself, I think, was a testament to the folks at SpaceX and NASA that we even launched during the kind of the peak of the pandemic, and folks made it happen and made it happen safely. But I think, because people were a little bit, they were kind of stuck, at home. They had the opportunity maybe to watch us fly in space that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have had they, had it been kind of normal and people had been, doing their normal routine every day. And so I think that was, in that vein, I think I'm very happy that we did inspire folks, in whatever way we did, because, doing something that is bigger than yourself, to me is one of the most incredible things you can do, supporting our planet, supporting, technology, pushing exploration, whatever you want to call it. If it inspired people, we're very happy. But once again, I don't think we quite realized at the time. I think part of it was we just didn't. And the other part was we were busy. They kept us very, very busy for the months we were up there. Because at the time, Chris Cassidy was the only U.S. crew member on space station for several months because of just because of the way the rotations had worked. And so there was a lot of work to be done on space station. We got there as well. But yeah, I think it's neat. And it's one of the things that makes me really smile about that time was that it did inspire people, and hopefully to participate in these types of things going forward, whether it's Artemis, whether it's STEM, whether it's technology, whether it's engineering, whether it's chemistry, whatever it is, to make this a better place.
Definitely. And we all just witnessed, Doug, the thrilling launch of Artemis I, the test flights, which will set the stage for humans going back to the moon and later to Mars and to the moon. I was born, by now you will know my age, the year of Apollo 11 was the American space flight that first landed humans on the moon. And Neil Armstrong, obviously, who became the first person to walk on the moon. It was amazing. Yeah. So what's made, NASA decide to resurrect the moon program? Is it because I remember when it was by the President of United States of America, he had a dream, and big dream that scared the whole, probably scientific people. But okay, we like big dreams and we go after them. And if they don't scare us, they are not big enough. Why doing it again, Doug? And is it the moon to Mars? We want to see if we can do it again. Give us a bit your perspective.
If you go way back in history with Apollo, we literally scratched the surface of the, we only sent, I think it was 6 flights to the moon and 5 landed, if I'm correct. Right. Remember my history. And it was between 1969 and 1972. And the scientific part of it, we barely did much. I think if you talk to, the geologists and the scientists, and there was just so much more to do. And, once again, NASA certainly has had to deal with the politics of, the politics and the budgets. They've had to do that since the day NASA was formed. And the decision was made by then President Nixon to cancel Apollo. Before we had flown out Apollo 18, 19, and 20, I think were in various stages of production to be able to fly those flights, and they were canceled. And, we went in a different direction. And then when I was an astronaut, an active astronaut, we had a couple different startups of lunar moon programs again. And, for budgetary reasons, political reasons, they just didn't take. And, it's great to see Artemis come to fruition with this first flight, and ideally many more, and then use the moon as a stepping stone to ultimately go to Mars, which I think is what everybody wants to do. But with the understanding that, you can take advantage of going to the moon, learning what we can about going to another planetary body and being able to stay there for longer periods, which is what's going to be part of the many technical challenges of going to Mars. And then once again, also the scientific discovery that's still out there as far as the moon is concerned, that we barely did during the Apollo era. So I think for many reasons, and then frankly, the third reason is a little bit about what we were talking about before. It's just inspiring those next generations of scientists and engineers. That's part of what space exploration needs to do. Is we need to keep these newer, younger folks involved in our industries, and this is a way that really inspires many people. If we're seeing pictures of the moon again in 2022, and then we have humans flying around the moon, hopefully in just a couple of years, and then landing on the moon not long after that to me is incredibly inspiring and emotional, but it's of it. And I think we need to have all those things in play to have these programs be successful.
Absolutely. And I think, as you say, this stepping stone to fly human to Mars, which is, big mission by itself. How soon do you think, Doug, that will be? And what do you think life will be like for the first astronauts that go there? Because it's a long way, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's hard to answer when we would go to Mars. I think, at this point, if I was sitting here in 2022, I think, it's probably a couple decades away, if not longer. And part of it is because the effort is going to be so monumental from the standpoint of it's not just going to be, and you can sort of see this with the Artemis Accords. You can see that many countries are involved with Artemis in one way, shape, or form. And I think to have a successful effort to send humans to Mars and then bring them home, that contribution has to come from many, many countries, many, many space agencies, private companies. I mean, it's just going to have to be this monumental effort to get humans to Mars safely. And so I think that in and of itself is going to take a while to kind of build that coalition and that program and then maintain that momentum that you're going to need in order to do that. And then of course, the other part of it is the technology. I think we have many of those technologies that we need, but there are certainly going to be things that we're going to learn with our longer stays on the moon during Artemis that will inform how we design our vehicles and our spacesuits and how we keep ourselves, or the human part of it, healthy. Certainly, and then the other part you mentioned is just the length of those missions. I mean, just to get to Mars with the technology we have today takes months, 6 to 9 months, depending on how the planets align. And then, of course, if you're going to go all the way to Mars, you can't just stay there for 2 days. You're going to stay there for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And so those missions could be years long for the humans, and to be able to keep humans healthy in that environment, which is so threatening, between radiation, the lack of gravity, all the different things that, you would experience in 2 or 3 years of living on the planet. Just think about what you're going to be subjected to in this type of mission, and then what we know and what we don't know. That there's a lot of challenges that we need to overcome to ensure that, the folks that go do these missions come back to their families. And so, lots to do, but it's exciting. And I mean, just think about when that first human sets foot on Mars, the whole world will probably be glued to a screen.
Yeah.
And then you just think about the inspiration that will create, and the scientific discovery that's probably waiting for us on Mars, since we think Mars is probably most like Earth in the solar system. And I can't even imagine. So, of course I can't wait, but I know, from, the way things are and to do it right, it'll take many years before we're there.
Yeah, I cannot wait neither. So now, Doug, instead of being an astronaut getting ready to fly, people say you're retired, but actually for the Artemis mission, you now work at Northrop Grumman, the company that created the solid rocket boosters for the Artemis mission, and as well as its launch abort system, which will automatically prepare the astronaut to safety if an accident occurs. And you talked about the importance, obviously, of safety. And by the way, as a company, we humbly, we are extremely proud to partner with Northrop Grumman to provide the ablative materials for the rocket nozzles and the launch abort system. So how does it feel now to be on this side of the curtain of the business, making the rockets that will power fellow astronauts into space and keeping them safe if any accidents were to happen during the launch? Are you a bit frustrated to say, I want to be there? Or you say, it's a time now that I impact and give my expertise into another part of the journey and the mission?
Certainly, given the opportunity, maybe you keep flying. But at some point, we all have to make the decisions, to do other things. And I think I kind of felt like for me and for our family, my wife is also an astronaut, and, putting your family through launches and space flights is very emotional for them. It's much harder for them than it is for you flying those space flights. And we have been, as a family, I've been on both sides of that. I've been, I was there at 3 a.m. in Kazakhstan, and I watched her launch to the space station for 6 months when our son was 3 years old. So it's one of those things that it's incredible to have the privilege to be able to fly in space, but it's also, a lot like the military people experience, where when your loved one is in space, there's always the opportunity that something bad can happen. And, it's just a level of stress that, you don't, at least from our family's perspective, we didn't want to just continue to do forever. Yeah. And the other part is this opportunity, certainly with Northrop Grumman, allows me to stay connected to the human spaceflight activity, and contribute to it, which, I'm certainly very passionate about it. I have been for a very long time. It also allows us to live somewhere that we've always wanted to live, in the mountains. And so this just seemed like a great fit for us as our son gets older, and we can, spend more time supporting him, because as a parent, you kind of feel like that's your number one job is at this point, is to make sure that you raise somebody who can contribute to society and make this world a better place. And so I think it was all those things that that kind of led to our decision to, stop flying, at least with NASA. And frankly, for me, it's like, if I'm not flying for NASA, I'm not sure I'd want to fly again. And, and then the other part is that there are plenty of people that deserve the opportunity to fly in space and to go do these great things. And, we had our opportunity and loved every minute of it, but it was time for something.
Yeah, what's a leadership lesson? So live in space for your successors. Before I close, Doug, and this is an inspiring and enriching, conversation, I wanted to ask you about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's very close to my heart in the industry, but in space exploration, because while things are improving quite a lot, there is still a long way to go. And I know that both you and Bob are married to accomplished astronauts who have incredible careers. It's, I think, probably unique. I try to do homework and to see if there are couples like this. And it's just fantastic to see that Artemis will set the stage for the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. Do you think that the industry is moving fast and in the right direction, Doug?
I certainly, from my perspective, I think, like with anything, there's certainly, you don't want to rest on your laurels, and there's certainly we can do better. But I certainly saw that as a NASA astronaut. We did so much to include and be diverse and get folks from all walks of life. And I think we did pretty well. Certainly, as I had been there a few years, when we started selecting for this what would be, I guess, considered the space station era, and as the shuttle was phasing out, and I think it makes for a better organization. The challenge that we have and maybe continue to have is just those fields that we select astronauts from. The diversity within those fields and still has a ways to go as well. So I think while we did a great job with our selection of astronauts, it also was a reflection of those particular fields and the number of women and people of color that were in those fields, relatively speaking. And I think you're seeing gains in those fields, and I think by default you'll see those gains be reflected certainly with these crews that will fly to the moon and ultimately to Mars. And yeah, I think it was really inspiring to see NASA make that statement very early on, that the first woman and the first person of color walking on the moon during Artemis, and just what that will do to inspire folks from those backgrounds to go into those fields. Kind of like we were talking before, it's, we need everybody we can get to go into the STEM fields, and whether it is you end up as an astronaut, whether you end up as a chemist, whether you end up as a mission controller, a flight director, whatever, somebody who designs the tools that we're going to use on the moon and on Mars, whatever the case. I think seeing someone that looks like you that is walking on the moon will have that incredible inspiration going forward. I know you can't wait, but neither can I. I mean, it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. And what's a pledge, right, to attract more STEM women and minorities, because that's the problem we are facing in my industry, is that we are still anecdotes at the top of companies because we miss the pipeline. And you mentioned it, is when you go and tap into these pools of candidates, you need that pipeline. So as you know, Doug, the podcast is about the power of the A&D, and how businesses can be both sustainable and profitable, and how we can ensure that we are science-based and human company, and that our scientific solutions are at the service of humanity. In space exploration, as in business, we have to take a risk, both in the short, long term, to be successful. And I think you are the perfect a role model, the perfect person to ask, because you are taking that spirit into the business world yourself by now. What do you think businesses can learn from space exploration and from astronauts like you?
Well, I think you said it. You have to be willing to risk for what you believe in. And not taking foolhardy risks, but just taking calculated risks in order to not only better the planet, but better exploration and for the benefit of your company. And I think all those things go hand in hand. And yeah, I hope that's the case as we go forward, that this type of endeavor that we're doing to explore the moon and ultimately Mars, we can, as a company or as companies, can take these risks in order to, set ourselves up for success in those missions. Because I think the safest thing you can do, certainly, and I remember a friend of mine used to say this all the time, it's like the safest thing you can do is not go fly in space and not go take these risks. And I think it's the same. I think it's the same for not only in your life, but in your business life. If you don't take any risks, there aren't going to be any rewards, whether it's, something better for humanity or whether it's something as basic as profit for your company. I mean, you're not going to get anything for free. So, I hope that, we can take inspiration from these huge, multi-company, multi-country exploration events, whether it's the moon, whether it's Mars, or whether it's even beyond that at some point, and realize that there is a reward, but you have to take those risks.
And you are an inspiration. I mean, this is an amazing conversation. So let me go to a final question. What do you enjoy doing most outside of your focus on space?
Well, yeah. So it's really just about our family, just being able to, watch our son grow up and experience all the things that he's experiencing. He's gotten to do some pretty neat things as a pretty young child. He's gotten to see his parents fly in space a few times and fly jets and all those things. And then now, his new life in Utah and living in the mountains and being able to, hike and ski and all those things that, my wife and I, Karen, love to do and have waited a long time to get here. And so I think it's just all those things and just having having a normal life.
Yeah. A normal life with an extraordinary man. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us today. Many people call you an American hero. For me, you are the family or the space dad, preferred space dad. I love that part. And I have to agree with all that you are a hero for all of us and a role model. I mean, today you have given us so many leadership lessons, which resonate with me and with many in the audience. So you made us dream. You inspired us. Thank you again for this fascinating discussion.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. For more information or to listen to other episodes, visit our website. And if you like these podcasts, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, be safe.